Hello, welcome to Tales from the Bridge. My name is Tristan,
My name is Sam.
I'm James.
And I'm Kevin.
and we've got a few things to talk about this week, don't we?
We sure do.
We've got a book of the month, The Thousand Earths by Stephen Baxter. We're going to find out what we're reading next, which is a pick from
Me.
Sam.
Yeah, it's my month. So sorry, everybody.
Yeah, this could be a tough one.
No pressure, Sam. It better be good.
I think we're good. I think we're safe this month. I feel pretty good about this one.
All right. If you're not already subscribed to Tales from the Bridge, consider doing so now. And if you like this stuff, tell somebody about it.
All right, let's make our way over to the bridge.
Hey, so we got some science fiction, science fact. Hey,
Yeah. This is a perfect example of science fiction becoming science fact, literally. Have you guys watched Black Mirror on Netflix, the series Black Mirror?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not in a while.
no,
No.
I haven't actually seen it.
No, I highly recommend for anybody who's not seen it. Just imagine a show where they take a near future technological idea and then they think about I wouldn't even say dystopian approaches to what that technology could mean for society. I would call it realistic possibilities for what these technologies will mean for society and they explore it in a kind of a dark way. Very well done. And for anybody who likes realism in their science fiction, Black Mirror on Netflix is a great series. But there was an episode where a bereaved wife, so a widow, subscribed to a service, like a near future service, where a company ingested all of her, dead husband's social media information and emails and correspondences and recordings of his voice and created a fake version of him. And in the show, they actually had like a robot, like there was a version of his body, but in essence, it was just this AI that acted like her dead husband. And of course, at the time of Black Mirror, that was very much sci-fi. But we have that now. I don't know if you guys know about this, but there is a large language model service called Seance AI, like Seance, like you're going to have a seance to call somebody from the dead. It's based on one of the large language models like ChatGPT or Llama or one of those. And it does exactly what Black Mirror episode suggested. You upload correspondences from your loved one, and it goes into this system and it retrains it to behave like that person and respond like them. And I mean, they advertise it as a way to get a little bit of closure and have short conversations and get responses that might be ways is similar to that loved one. And it seems very weird, but you could almost see some cathartic elements to that, for some people who really need that. So anyway, I saw that and I was like, man, that is science fiction becoming literal science fact. We've got our large language models, our AI models allow us to do that. What do you think? Is this good? Is this bad? Is it weird?
It's a great name for what
Great
they
name.
Yeah,
Totally
Sounds
great
bad.
name.
It
Yeah.
is.
Perfect.
yeah. I don't know. I can imagine if you've lost someone and you wanted some sort of connection to keep around. Hey, and if that helps you grieve and get you through the process, I'm all for it. Like it do what you got to do. I could imagine it being something you either come to depend on, or if it's just a little bit wrong, it would feel really weird, right? I
Right.
think that's when it would be kind of go sideways for me. But
The uncanny valley, right? Where it's not quite human. It's just not there.
Well, there must be some sort of plot in that Black Mirror that goes wrong, right? That's usually what happens in that show. So did something really bad happen with this person that's not
Yes.
actually there?
Yes, something did actually.
And is that what we would see? Do you think that's realistic?
No. It
Okay,
it
okay.
varied. It diverged. I won't
So
give
that
away.
was science fiction.
It was. But here's another thing. There is another app that is related to this called Talk to Your Ex. So it's a completely separate company, is doing something very similar. You upload information from your ex, and you can continue to communicate with them. But not only that, you could upload photos of them, and it will try to create simulated avatars of them, and you can talk to them. What do you think about that?
That sounds so fun. I'd love to do that.
Really?
Maybe two or three of them at once. I don't
Uh,
know.
your wife would love
Uh,
you talking about your exes that way.
Yeah, it might be you. We'd be calling up on seance after that, if need be. But
That's right.
yeah, I don't know. That one especially to me sounds it triggers that saying of just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. I and I kind of buy into it a little bit more with seance, I think. At first, I mean, I'm a skeptic too. We were talking about being skeptical about something else earlier, and it instantly sort of gives me the willies a little bit, thinking that it's an artificial band-aid over a natural process. It's something that, like Black Mirror, which I loved the first few seasons, I was very into. So I'm glad you brought that up, Kevin. But there are always cautionary tales, and I can't help but think that something like Seance, even if well intentioned, unless it was done with the supervision of like a counselor,
Mm.
or a therapist or someone like that, I could see it having some purpose then. But man, life is messy and complicated, and sometimes it might not be worth trying to artificially fix it, if you know what I mean.
Unlose the loss. Right.
Yeah, because
Right.
you're not really.
Mm.
It's not truly unlosing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just me.
Yeah, I
Totally.
think I think that we're going to see a lot more weird stuff like that popping up very soon because of the language models that are coming out, and that's just going to change all kinds of communication from, yeah, just making a model for something that does not even exist anymore,
Mm.
but we remember it. And yeah, the X thing, that's super weird. And I mean, but at the same time, there's been blow up dolls for, I mean, how many years? And I mean, most people are like, that's weird, but it's for a certain group of people. So, I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know.
Tell us more, Tristan. But
Tell us about these blow up
yeah,
dolls.
yeah. But,
Yeah,
what
off
do
the
you have to share
record,
with us?
go.
Where's that delay button when you need it, right?
This month was my choice, and I wanted to do a Stephen Baxter book. I almost chose an older Stephen Baxter book, something like really hard sci-fi, and then discovered that The Thousand Earths was published in 2022. So I was like, well, let's do a new Stephen Baxter, and I wanted to read one of his newer things because I've only read his books that are about probably early 2000s and before. Um, and I need to read a lot more. So I absolutely loved this book. Like really loved this book. There's two stories. The time scale that the stories are told, or at least the one story, is huge. You've got John Hackett, who goes on an adventure, which is really just him traveling deep into space and returning and passing through. I mean, at first, I think it's 5 million years at the beginning of the book, and you're like, holy smokes, we just traveled 5 million years within like a few pages. This is huge. We then travel 5 billion years by the end into the future, which is a scale of storytelling that I've never read before. And then you've got another story, which is much more uh, emotional. It's a story of family, and it's the main character, Mela, who is on a planet in which the land is falling. And I believe it's 30 years when we start off. So Mela's story is just countdown from 30 years from her as a child to becoming a leader and watching the world come to an end at the end. And then we've got John Hackett, who travels 5 billion years. I was wondering the whole time if they were going to connect, and I'm not sure if I want to say if they did or not. I think it's a neat little thing to not know whether the stories do connect. They're so different. I loved both of these stories, and I loved them both for different reasons. They were so opposite of each other in terms of the characters, what they did, and who they met, and what happened. They were. It was like two books in one, but they were meant for each other. These stories. Um, I've read a couple of Baxter's older ones. Like I said, they're very hard sci-fi. One he wrote with he did a trilogy with Arthur C. Clarke, so it was very. The first one was Times I believe, and that one's actually connected to the 2001 series. So that one opened. I remember that one opening up with an ape on the landscape, and just being like showing the evolution of humans. And the other one was his big series, the Zeely sequence. I read the first book there, and I've got to get more into those. So I really love those. I'd say that this book, or Stephen Baxter, people that like Hamilton, Peter F. Hamilton, would probably like Baxter. Alistair Reynolds, probably like Baxter. There's a few more authors like that, the British hard sci-fi authors. They kind of fit well here. But I'm actually surprised by how much I did enjoy this book, because like I said, we talked about this before. This was going to be like, let's give James a hard sci-fi. Let's see if you could do this. And to my surprise, it actually wasn't. It wasn't a hard sci-fi. Maybe a few little elements. It did talk about nebulas and how stars collapse, and a few things that were over my head, but I tried to grapple with. But Baxter's obviously a very, very intelligent person and writer. And yeah, just I love this. It's the best book I've read in a couple of months, maybe more. So I'm super happy with the choice, and I hope you guys liked it. But if you didn't, it'll be Sam, and we'll find out how much you didn't like it in a moment. But yeah, what'd you guys think?
Well, I'll jump in, being the new guy. And it was my first Baxter book that I had read, so that was an interesting experience. And it was also my first audiobook. I had prided myself on being a purist and only reading real on-print books, but you guys had talked me into adopting audiobooks, and that was an interesting concept too, because with the two narratives, there were two different narrators, which was kind of a delightful discovery as well too, and they were both fine, both fine narrators, I thought. I Although I have to say I was impressed by the big ideas and the massive time scale as well too. I was a little on the fence, to be honest, in terms of enjoyment. There were certain things that I felt were maybe maybe I was hoping for a little more of that hard sci-fi that you were threatening me with earlier, Tristan. But some things felt a little hand wavy, a little bit like, oh yeah, technology, it's billions of years in the future. That don't worry about it. Sometimes I found it a little tough to buy into, believe it or not, which is usually not a problem. But I thought the concept was really interesting. In terms of taking that one person and having their view on things. And I don't want to give away too much. I don't want to get into spoiler land either. But there were certain things too that I would have liked a little more explanation of, or maybe details of. But again, maybe that's getting into the weeds on these things. Like the substrate was an idea that was mentioned and sort of took on two different roles throughout the book. But I kind of wanted a little more exploration, and maybe a little more detail. But um, yeah, it was good, and I would certainly read another Baxter book. There was certainly enough there to promote that for me, or to encourage that. Um, I had a little bit of trouble. Well, not trouble, but tell me if you guys are on the same page with this. On the thousand Earths, or the one Earth, I should say, that Mela and her family were on, that was essentially disintegrating. And here I'm going to date myself and out myself as an old comic book nerd as well too. But as I was imagining that process going down, I don't know if you guys read comic books in the 80s, but there was a big tentpole series called Crisis on Infinite Earths. You guys know this series at all? What they did is DC Comics took all their multiverses and crunched them into one. But that was the Infinite Earths and the Crisis, and it was, there was the big bad guy who who basically it was a wall of energy that sucked up the if I'm recalling it correctly, ate up and destroyed all the infinite universes, and it was basically a big white wall of energy that just came and devoured the Earths, and that's what I sort of pictured this process to be like. Is that kind of what you guys matched? I didn't know if I was on the right page with that, so to speak.
It wasn't well described near the end. I think it was, but yeah, I think that's a pretty good. I think that is a fairly similar thing to what I think Stephen was trying to describe when the world was ending. Yeah, just
Yeah,
the uh the
at the periphery,
tide,
which
right? The
again,
climb of the tide.
those were all cool. I'm sorry, Kevin. I don't. Sorry to interrupt, but it was. I did want to say too that in talking about that, it was some of the scenes and the set pieces, like when Mela and her family went to visit the periphery where the tide, as Baxter called it, was literally devouring the earth. That was really cool stuff, and lots of great seeds planted. But
He called it the tide, and I think he did describe it um as like a wall or a light thing near the end. It was bright and ate the world.
yeah, yeah. But it kind of again, it kind of was a bit nebulous to me. One thing again, while avoiding spoilers, I narratively I was sort of hoping that by the time we got to the end, I had wished that Mela's quest with her companions, once she sort of gets into a bit of a higher gear, shall we say, I kind of hoped that that would have, or wished that that would have started earlier. I felt like that would have driven things a little, given it a little more energy, a little more oomph to me, fully acknowledging that maybe this is not the book for oomph. Maybe it's the wrong place to insert that kind of thing. But I thought it was a really interesting um, thing that they were driving to, and couldn't wait to get to the end. He did really get me at that point. I just wish it had maybe started a bit sooner. But so yeah, I definitely, to use another critic's term, a thumbs up for sure, but a little bit on the fence. Not quite what I had hoped for. So
I if I have never read a straight Stephen Baxter book before. This is my first. I've read where he co-authored with Terry Pratchett in the Long Earth series, and I may have mentioned this, but I've read a lot of Terry Pratchett, and that Long Earth series was not Terry Pratchett. It was somebody else, and that somebody else was obviously Stephen Baxter. That series is great. And this book I thought was great. So if this is the softer of Stephen Baxter stuff, I want to read some of the harder of Stephen Baxter. So I'm looking forward to going into his back archive of books and exploring those, because I do really love those galactic scale ideas, like John Hackett using relativity as a time travel machine into the future, and just saying, I'm just going to go out to Andromeda Galaxy and I'm going to come back because I want to see what's going to happen when our galaxies collide, right? Like that's how grand is that? You don't get any more grand than that type of an idea. And he thinks through what it would mean for our spiral arm of the galaxy, of the Milky Way, when the Andromeda Galaxy and the Milky Way collide. Not necessarily star collisions, but what does it mean for the sky? What does it mean for a human society when the Earth starts to become a red giant? When the sun starts to become a red giant, what does it mean for the Earth? Mars becomes more habitable suddenly because it's in the Goldilocks zone. Earth becomes too hot to survive. Um, so I love those ideas, and the two storylines. I too was kind of trying to figure out what was happening there. Um, but I thought it was good. I really liked the John Hackett storyline. Um, and I also liked the other one as well, but I wanted more John, because really that's the type of thing that I was looking for here with Stephen Baxter type hard sci-fi. But I agree with you, James. I had a few things that were kind of niggling at me, and all science fiction books have an element of fantasy. It's just when you start to go down the road of the science part, it's more noteworthy when the fantasy emerges. And so, as you say, the substrate, that was an undescribed substance that was so fundamental to the storyline that he just kind of didn't explore. It left me saying, yeah, what about that? Or why the tide? Like, I don't even know why. I don't think it was well explained why the worlds were designed that way. And anyway, but I thought he did a great job also of exploring the theme of immigration and emigration when you have scarce resources as the world's getting smaller. What does it mean for humans? And we have to have empathy, but there's also scarcity of resources. So what do we do when we don't have a lot of stuff? And it's just hard. And so he explores that. And I don't think he gets too political with it. I think he just talks about it as it is. That was my impression of it. Um, and I also have to say that the character John Hackett was quintessentially a sci-fi character who is just not fazed by stuff. He's like, sure, yeah, I'll just travel 5 billion years into the future. No big deal. Let's just do it. And I personally love that, but you got to wonder how much of a believable character that is. But yeah, John Hackett was my kind of sci-fi space traveler. But I love him. I'd like to see him in more books. So Tristan, thumb up for me.
Ever wondered what it takes to make it in the movie business? Peel back the curtain with 4-6 Success Filmmaking. 4-6 Success Filmmaking is where filmmakers share their stories and the secrets.
It's beyond competitive out there.
There have been movies that it's taken me 10 years to get made.
Don't wait to create. Like, you've got to just keep making stuff.
Tune in to 4-6 Success Filmmaking for your dose of cinematic realness, direct from the voices that have lived it.
Well, I know I told Tristan, he's like, so what did you think of the book? I was like, well, I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. Like, it's thumbs sideways for me. I sort of felt like a sort of cross between The Time Machine, meets Canticle for Leibowitz, and in a way, and I loved the imagined futures of John Hackett, and that side of the story for me was the more compelling one than Mila's. I thought Mila's story, I mean, it didn't drive anything, right? You're just sort of following along, and I don't know that her story, I don't even know that her story drove her own story, and so for me, that's a key sort of storytelling failing. And like some of the things like the substrate, I agree, that wasn't really well described until you go to the afterword. And in the afterword, he sort of referenced where he got all of his technologies, and that was actually really interesting. And I would have liked to have seen more of that brought into, and I'm not a hard sci-fi guy, but that would have helped me buy a lot more of what I was hearing about the stuff that sort of was a throwaway. Well, you go to disappear into the substrate and it's cool. I kind of wanted more for that as well. But I think the writing style as well threw me a little bit. If it doesn't, like, I was surprised to notice, I had to double check that it was actually published in 2022, because it felt like a 1990s book. That style of like 80s, 90s, early aughts, like that style for me, which I don't read a lot of older sci-fi anymore, or never really did. I really do like this latest generation of sci-fi writers. I think they're making really good sci-fi, and I think he is good, and I think this is a interesting book. It's not a great one. I would read more by this author. I would struggle to really sing my praises about this one, because I'm not singing its praises. I think it was an okay book. It was fine, and it had elements that kept me engaged and kept me reading and pulled me along, but nothing. I didn't feel I couldn't wait. It's not like I couldn't wait to read it every night. As I jumped into bed and I was like, all right, here I go. I sort of feel like a bit of a slog, and I felt like the Mila storyline was definitely a weak point that could have moved a little faster, been more strongly connected to John Hackett's storyline. I don't know that that sort of weaving of the two storylines was particularly well done either. But yeah, so that's my take on it. I mean, it was fun, but it's not something I would recommend. There's so many other, like, we do live in a sort of golden age of the Renaissance, even of great sci-fi, and so it's the mediocre stuff's hard to for me to sort of hang my hat on a little bit. But again, not a bad book by any stretch. So, anyways, I hope that's sort of middle-ish of the road, Tristan. I don't mean to come after you. Like, it was a good.
All three of you. Wow. No, that's great. I mean, I hadn't read much of him when I did it, and I don't know. I really did like it. Maybe it was just timing for me, but I really did like it. Well, I'm glad you guys read it and got a little bit of something from it. And some of the themes are probably a little bit repetitive, such as, I mean, it doesn't seem like you can ever escape the same problems we have, which is a theme that we've heard a few times. But but you can't escape problems, and I do see that there's younger generation, there's a lot of escapism going on, and I think that was a strong theme in there, that go 5 billion years into the future, you're still going to find some of the same issues, and something that symbolically, I don't know if you guys caught into this one, but there was no change in the human physiology much in those 5 billion years, which would you could say that, well, that's fantasy, and likely it is. However, that's a very strong symbol that was probably intentional by Baxter to say that we are the same, and something we were saying not long ago when talking about ancient aliens, or the people that built the pyramids. Obviously, they weren't stupid. They weren't these other stupid people that lived totally different from us. They were very similar. In fact, a lot of scientists say they were exactly like us. And I think I think that was an intentional symbol in Baxter's story, that humans aren't going to change, and we're really amazing and beautiful and awesome, and we kind of suck. We've got those two things, and you could travel for 5 billion years and still be faced with that reality.
Well said. Okay.
All right. What piece of crap are we reading next?
I just teed myself up for a big old.
No, I always say that, though. I always say that. I don't think I've never really not enjoyed any of the books. Some more than others, but I've never been like that.
I'm gonna be like distracted by something. We're all gonna be out having a pint and some wings or something. I'm gonna be distracted, and Tristan's just gonna come up and fucking kick me in the nuts. That's what's gonna happen. It's just like big old kick in the pants to you.
You and your book
friend.
selection. Take that.
right.
Sam's nuts.
That's right. Well, I'm gonna do something a little different. I think we have talked about this series, and we've talked about a lot of the books that we talk about, and are part of a series, and it's hard to do a series because if maybe some of us have read book 1, or maybe none of us have, or it's on book 10 and it doesn't feel relevant or something like that, and so we're going to try something a little different. I hope our listeners, I hope my fellow co-hosts are cool with this. We've talked a lot about The Expanse, and we've never actually reviewed The Expanse. We've reviewed the show, but we've actually never had an Expanse book from that series as our book of the month. And I know this is, there's great stuff coming out. The Hugos are coming out. Like there's great books that have come out this year. We should be actually be covering that stuff and feeling relevant, but I didn't feel like doing that. So anyway, there's still time before Glasgow. And so my thinking is because we were all at various stages of that series, I wonder if we have a general talk about The Expanse. So if you haven't started it, then you read book 1, start in book 1. If you're on the last book like I am, then I'll read that and review the series without spoilers if we can, and talk about it in a sort of higher level terms. it might be a little challenging, but it just feels criminal that we haven't done The Expanse yet. I don't know that I feel like rereading the first one, and there's so many books to cover here that I feel like maybe The Expanse deserves an expansive review.
Expansive review. I like that. Okay, I'm game.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Cool. All right. So I don't know. I gotta have to read the last two books because it's there's so much time between books. So just to sort of cover that, and I'll be very careful when I talk about it not to deliver spoilers to any of you guys or our audience, and just if we can talk character arcs or something, we could sort of, or however, but there's so much to talk about in that universe, and I think that universe is so well done. I think just on world building alone, we could do a fill-in episode on it, so
and it's entertaining. Like, I mean, you can't go wrong with these books. They're all entertaining. I think I'm going to be reading book 7. Persepolis Rising will be the one that I'm reading.
Nice.
I will be starting book 6,
Babylon's Ashes.
Babylon's Ashes.
And I think I'm going to, because I've only watched a bit of the TV series, so I'm going to start at book 1 and lead us in from the beginning.
Leviathan Wakes. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So yes, so for those people who don't know, The Expanse is a series of science fiction novels by James S.A. Corey, which is the joint pen name of authors Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. So the first novel was published, that's Leviathan Wakes, was nominated for the Hugo Award for Best Novel in 2012. And the latest book was published in March of 2022. So it's an appropriately named series, and I definitely feel like the first half of the series was the strongest, the sort of middle part of that series, but in particular. But these are characters I'm happy to revisit and I've missed, and we've talked about the show so much it seems criminal that we haven't talked about the books. So anyways, those are our books of the month.
Awesome.
Nice.
Good one.
Thank you for joining us on Tales from the Bridge today. We really appreciate you. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. Tell someone about the show if you think they might like it. As usual, until next time.